out of the pit. And they sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. If I can now just borrow the words of our beloved sister Diana Ross, just please tell somebody, I'm coming out of this.
Out of this.
Yeah, y'all didn't say that. Y'all didn't want to say it. Y'all sound a little scared to tell somebody. I need you to declare in this room and let somebody else know that I'm coming out of this.
Out of this.
Somebody still didn't say it. I'm going to try one more time. Don't let the devil hold your tongue. You want to make a declaration. I don't care what you're in right now. I need you to speak things into the atmosphere. The Bible says that there was no light until God said, let there be light. There was no air until God said, let there be air. So if you're still in it and don't want to say it, I declare you can say it right now and be out of it. Come on, declare in this room that I'm coming out of this. I am coming out of this. Here now we find a very familiar account in the scripture. And we find a young man by the name of Joseph. And we find that Joseph had some brothers. And one thing about Joseph is he was a dreamer. And he was hated because he was a dreamer. Because of the things that were shown to him. In other words, because of his character and because he was who he was, he just was hated. And I'll stop by to tell you there's some folks that just hate just to hate. They hate you just because they hate you. If I could really just, because I know somebody felt good when I said that. When I said some folks hate you just because they hate you, you begin to list the people in your mind. There's some folks you don't like. All right. Simply because you don't like them. They didn't do anything to you. They didn't say anything to you. You just don't like the way she looked. You just don't like the way she sang.
Jesus.
Look at that. I'm sorry, y'all don't do that. When
Jesus.
Y'all don't. I know. I'm sorry.
Oh, Lord.
But there's some folks that just don't like folks simply because they don't like him. But now they had another reason not to like him. Because he was a dreamer. Can I tell you point two? Some folks don't like other people because they can do what they can't do.
All right. Amen.
I'm going to say it again. Some folks don't like other folks because they can do what they can't do.
Amen.
You know, sometimes you feel intimidated when you can't do like you used to do. You might go to race to run or walk or whatever you're doing and you see some young little something come up next to you and just pass you through and see, I can't stand, get on my nerves. Think they better than me. You just feel a little different because you can't do it like you used to do it.
My Lord.
When you were younger, you used to be able to stay up all night, take a shower, get up and go back to work. But you can't do like you used to do anymore. Things change. Time begin to change. And they hated Joseph simply because he dreamed and they didn't. I hear God right now. There's some folks that hate you because you have dreams and you have visions and they don't.
My Lord.
Some folks can't stand you because you can see and they don't.
My Lord.
There's some folks that hate on others because some have money and they don't. But the folks that have money say, if you knew what I had to do to get this money, you would do the same thing to get some yourself. Don't hate on me. You don't know what I had to do to get where I am now.
Yes, Lord.
You got to be very careful. I wish I was you. Are you sure about that?
Jesus.
So they hated Joseph because he was a dreamer, because he could do what they could not do, because the Lord showed him vision, because the Lord showed him insight. And when every time they saw him, they let that hate build up. If I can say something else to you, you've got to be careful letting jealousy and hate build up on the inside of you. It will cause you to do things that you never thought you were capable of doing. Be careful with the seed of jealousy building up in you. They let the seed. Every time he got up in the morning, there he go again. They begin to hate him. When they saw him in the afternoon, they begin to hate him. Day after day and year after year, that hate began to just build up till they decided the sight of him was so bad they had to get rid of him.
Jesus, my Lord.
They wanted to get rid of the dreamer. So that the Bible declares in verse 19, they said, well, hear one another, behold, the dreamer cometh. The dreamer cometh. Can I really tell you something? This in verse 19, this is powerful. He was not identified by his name in verse 19. He was identified by his gift. I'm going to say it again. They didn't say, behold, Joseph cometh, but behold, the dreamer cometh. After a while, when God begins to anoint you and give you, you're no longer identified by your name, but you're identified by what you can do and identified by your gift.
Jesus.
All of us do it.
My Lord.
That's right. Amen.
When you go to the bank, you don't go to see Peggy, you need a teller.
All right. All right.
I'm going to say it again. You go to the grocery store, well, not anymore, you check yourself out. But it used to be you go to the grocery store, you need a cashier. You don't necessarily need the person, you need what they can do. It's nothing wrong with that.
Amen. Amen.
I don't go to the doctor looking for Jack. If I need a surgeon, I need him not for his name. I don't care how nice he is, but he's nice. He can talk to me, and we just had a nice conversation. But can you do what I need you to do?
All right. Can you operate? Amen.
So now Joseph came, but they didn't identify Joseph. They hated the gift more than they hated Joseph. But you got to be careful, because if you hate what somebody can or cannot do, there's a very thin line between hating the person and hating what they can or cannot do.
Yes.
Jesus.
So now they said, behold, the dreamer cometh. And now come, let us slay him, the dreamer, and cast him into some pit, and let some evil beast devour him, so that you can now see what becomes of his dreams. I talked about people hating you so much. They not only wanted to kill Joseph, but they wanted to kill the dreamer, because they felt like if the dreamer died, then the dreams would die too. If the dreamer was gone, then they would stop hearing about the dreams.
Yes. Amen.
And if they stopped hearing about the dreams, I didn't mention to you, but then their father Jacob, their father Israel, would start liking and loving them more, because they were upset and they were jealous because of Joseph's gift. And because of Joseph's gift, listen to this, his gift made room for him. His father wanted to hear about his gift, so he became his favorite, and they became jealous.
Amen.
Amen.
So then they said, let us kill him, let us devour him. And then they heard about it, and they cast him into the pit and cast him into the wilderness. But then they decided, wait a minute, instead of killing him, let us try to make a little money off of him, or let us try to make some profit off of him. Sometimes you will meet some people in your life that will try to get what they can get off of you by any means necessary. You're their enemy on Tuesday until you can do something to help them.
All right.
It's all about what can you do.
Yes. Amen.
Jesus.
Like our sister Jackson said, she said, by the way, I just asked the question, what have you done for me
All right.
lately? What have you done? So they cast him into the pit where there was no water in it, and they sat down and they were happy because he was there. Then they decided to sell him into slavery. But now as we look at verse 28, there were some Midianites, there were some merchantmen, and they drew and lifted Joseph out of the pit. I think this is very important here, because listen, Joseph was in a pit, and even though he was being sold into slavery, those who came to get him still had to lift him out of the pit. Now some might say, well, that's crazy, because they lifted him out of the pit to sell him into slavery. But as long as he was not in the pit, then he was not going to die. Those who were there to sell him, to take him into slavery, did not realize they were saving that man's life. I stop by to tell you, sometimes there are things that come your way you don't understand, but it came by just to save your life.
All right. Amen.
Joseph was about to die, but the Midianites came and pulled him from the pit.
Jesus.
Amen.
And then Joseph went and he lived in slavery. And one might say, well, then that's not a good thing for somebody to be living in slavery. But now let's go to Genesis 39. Genesis chapter 39. 9. We're going to read a little bit. 39, it says, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, and the Egyptian brought him to the hands of the Ishmaelites, and they brought him there. And the Lord was with Joseph.
Hallelujah.
And he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. So now Joseph was sold, the dreamer was sold into slavery. But not only was Joseph sold into slavery, but I want you to catch this. His dream was sold into slavery too. Can I say this? Not only was Joseph going through slavery, but his dream was where with him. That means no matter where he went, his gift went with him as well. And because his gift was with him,
Jesus.
the Bible declares he was made as prosperous man. Verse 3.
Right.
And the master saw the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Amen. Joseph found grace even in slavery, even in his go-through. Joseph found grace even in his misery. Joseph found grace. Tell somebody you can find grace right now. You can find grace. I don't care what it is. Y'all didn't, not one person said it. Tell somebody you can find grace right now. You can find grace in the middle of what you are in right now. I don't care how bad it is. Joseph found
Amen. Hallelujah.
grace.
Yes.
In his sight, and he served him, and the master made Joseph overseer of his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass that the time that he made him overseer over his house and everything that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Now because Joseph was there, not only was Joseph blessed, but everything that Joseph came in contact to was blessed. The man that was in the pit, the Midianite, saved him life and brought him to his master, and now Joseph was blessing the master.
Amen. Woo, yeah.
It says he blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, and the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in his house. I stopped by to tell you, when God blesses, he blesses. The blessing was upon all that he had in his house. I don't care if it was the sheets, I don't care if it was the carpet, I don't care if it was the TV, I don't care if it was the refrigerator, I don't care if it was the microwave. God blesses everything.
Amen.
All right. Amen.
And he blessed all that he had in his house, and not just in his house, and in the fields too. That means everything that was around them. Verse 6, and he left all that he had in Joseph's hand. And he knew not what he had, save the bread that he did eat. This man trusted Joseph so much. He didn't count his money. He didn't worry about what was in the house. All he worried about is the bread he had to eat.
Amen.
All right.
And save the bread. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. So Joseph seemed to be doing very well. So he was, listen, Joseph was in the pit, but the Midianites rescued him. And even though their intent was to pull him into slavery, Paul prophesied these words even in the book of Romans, and we know that all things work together for the good. So even though it seems like I'm going into something else bad, it has to work out for my good, because that is a law. So Joseph went into something else that would have caused someone else misery. If I can take my next point, just because it took somebody else out don't mean it got to take you out too.
All right. Amen.
Don't let people convince you, oh no, that happened to me, and oh, I barely recovered. Oh, that did me real bad. Oh, that happened to sister such and such, she can't walk right now. Oh, if that happens to you, such and such had a nervous breakdown when that happened. Forget about all that stuff. Just because it happened like that to you, don't mean that that's my story.
All right. Amen.
So the Bible declares that Joseph was there. And then we look on, and we've heard the account before. In verse 8, we see that Potiphar's wife laid her eyes on Joseph, and she saw Joseph, and she caught him and went to go lie with and tried to lie with Joseph. Joseph didn't want to do it. He fled and went to get away. But the woman took his garment and showed it to Potiphar, and Potiphar got upset. Verse 20 says, and Joseph's master took him and placed him into prison. So Joseph was up, and now it was time to be down again. A place where the king's prisoner were bound, and he was there in prison. Verse 21, but the Lord.
But the Lord.
I'm going to say it again, but the Lord.
But the Lord.
And what we do about English, and one thing I studied about the English language, when you insert the word but into a sentence, you can now negate and reverse everything that happened before the word but. I heard a preacher say, thank God for that but, but the Lord.
But the Lord
Was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor everywhere in the sight of the keeper of the prison. I got to come back to this because I really can't get into it like I want to, but I think I'm going to get to my next point right here. If I can just tell you this, this is very important. There used to be a commercial that comes on TV. I think it was somewhere in the 80s and the 90s. And it used to be about the American Express card. And they used to say, don't leave home without it.
Amen.
I am so glad that no matter what I do, that it does not matter who you are, as long as the favor of God travels with you, then you will be made all right in every situation. David says, thou preparest a table before me right in the presence of my enemies. Wherever Joseph went, the favor of God traveled with him. He went into slavery because he was in favor. That slavery translated and the situation changed just for him. I serve the type of God who will turn around an entire situation and it will change characteristics just for me.
Yes.
Not only did God favor Joseph, but God put Joseph in authority. And the best way for you to get out of your struggle and to get out of your mess is for God to put you in a place of authority. I've stopped by to tell you that we were meant to be in authority.
Jesus.
He said, I shall make you the head and not the tail, and you shall be above only and never beneath.
Yes, hallelujah.
It is God's intention
for
every single one of us to operate in a place of authority.
Amen.
Joseph was trusted enough that everywhere he went, they placed him in authority. Verse 22 says, the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand. Now, wait a minute. Listen, I don't know if anybody's ever worked in corrections. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I haven't, but I'm very aware of what happens. You can lose your job. And not just lose your job. You can be prosecuted criminally if you leave a prisoner unsupervised. I'm going to tell you again. You in jail. They tell you when you work in corrections, don't listen to anything they say to you because all they're trying to do is get out. They will smile at you to get out. They will lie at you to get out. They will be your best friend to get out. They just want something from you. This man put everything he had on the line for another prisoner.
Jesus.
Why did he do that? Because the favor of God was greater than what he thought. The favor of God was with Joseph, and the keeper of the prison left everything under his hand. Some people might wonder why you're in the position you're in now. But just let them know, because I got favor. If I can really just break it down to you, Joseph had 2 jobs that he did not apply for.
All right.
Let me just break it down. Joseph had 2 jobs he was not quote unquote qualified for.
Right.
But because the favor of God was over his life, God elevated without qualification. I've stopped by to let you know that when the favor of God is on your life, there will be people that had to work for something for years and years in their life. But God has a way of elevating you just like that because his favor is over your life. Don't you worry about what they had to slave to get. That's not how it's going to work for me because I got the favor.
Yes. Amen.
Joseph was in charge
Yes.
simply because he had
Favor.
And not only did he have favor, but God was able to place him in the right place. I don't know if we understood, but it says that Joseph was placed in the king's prison.
All right.
Understand, Joseph was just a slave. Oftentimes, no, I want to break it down more. When slaves did something, they weren't good enough to go to prison. They executed them instantly. That's just what happened.
Jesus.
When a slave did something wrong, they didn't try to put them and hold them in jail. They executed him. But this man, Joseph, not only was he placed in jail, but he was placed in the jail where the royal prisoners, where the political prisoners, where the prisoners of the king were set. Even though, listen to this, I understand this, that God never places me in the wrong place. He can make everything the right place. Even though it looks like I'm in a mess right now, God can still make it work where I am.
Amen.
Now.
Amen.
So he was in the prisoner, and he was there with the butler of the king and the baker of the king. And they began to tell the story of how Pharaoh was upset with them because they went to because the butler tried to poison the Pharaoh. And they were there, and the Pharaoh left them there. And while Joseph was there, his dream came forth. And Joseph dreamed the dream, and we can get into the account later. And he told them in chapter 40, verse 19, within 3 days the Pharaoh will lift his head from you. And he told one of them, he's going to hang you on a tree, and the birds are going to eat your flesh. But he told the other one, the chief baker, that the Lord is going to lift him up among all his servants. You're going to be restored. And it came to pass that all of these things happened, but the chief butler did not remember Joseph. And Joseph stayed where he was. So it seemed like Joseph was just going to be there for a while. Verse 41, then I got to close in the presence of chapter 41 verse. Rather, I've got to close in the presence of the Lord. It came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. There came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat flesh and bent in metal. And behold, 7 other kine came up from them and little favored lean flesh. And they stood by the brink of the river. Verse 4, and all the ill-favored and the lean flesh ate up the 7 well-favored kine, and Pharaoh awoke from his sleep. And he slept and dreamed again a second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn, verse 5, came up one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted the east wind and sprung up after them. The 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. The Bible declares, starting at verse 8, that when Pharaoh got up from those 2 dreams, that Pharaoh was troubled. And he called for his magicians. He called for his soothsayers. He called for somebody, his wise men thereof. Please explain to me what is going on in my dream. But the magicians came, and they could not tell Pharaoh what was going on. The soothsayers came, and they could not tell Pharaoh what was going on. Pharaoh, I'm sure, became upset. He wanted to understand what was happening in his dream. But then all of a sudden, he became upset. And the chief butler said to Pharaoh, wait a minute. I remember when you put me in jail, there was a man in there, verse 12, a Hebrew servant, a captain of the guard, and he interpreted our dreams, and I remembered who he was. Verse 14, then Pharaoh sent and called for him, and they brought Joseph quickly out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. I got to get back to this next week because I got to get out of here in the presence of the Lord. But I'm just going to leave you with this thought as I get ready to close. The Bible declares that Joseph was there in the dungeon, but when the Pharaoh heard about his gift, he quickly pulled him out of the dungeon that he was in. in. I serve the type of God that will quickly pull you
Yes.
out of the
Hallelujah.
dungeon that you're in, of the
Amen.
prison that you're in.
Yes.
Some of you've been in the torment of a mind for years and years and years. You felt shackled, but God said, today I am hastily
Hallelujah.
pulling you out.
Yes,
Not
Lord.
only did he pull him out, but he shaved himself and got himself ready to go before royalty. You've been so used to being down, depressed, and trodden for so long, but I hear the Lord say, get yourself ready, because
Yes.
I'm taking
Hallelujah.
you to different places.
Yes.
I'm taking you to new places. You were dressed for the dungeon, but now you got to be dressed to go see the king. You've got to be dressed for royalty. Get yourself together. He shaved himself and he changed his clothes. He had on the clothes of a prisoner, but he could not go before the king looking like a bum in a prisoner. There's something God says, before I take you there, I've got to change your attitude. I've got to change everything about you. You're so used to being upset, but I've got to change.
Yes, Lord.
The Bible declares, and he changed his raiment.
Hallelujah.
And we're going to come back to it next week, 41 and 15. He changed his raiment.
Amen.
And he came back to the king.
Yes, Lord.
He was in the pit ready to die. The Midianites rescued him from the pit. And he didn't die because the slaveholders rescued him.
Yes.
They rescued him and sold him into slavery.
Yes, Jesus.
But this time the Pharaoh rescued him.
Yes.
And summoned him to come see the king.
Yes.
I stopped by to tell you, you do not have to, I hear God now. I don't care what you thought. You do not have to stay in the same place that you are now. The devil has tried to convince the people of God that it is your obligation, or that it is up to you to stay in the same place for the rest of your life. I don't care if you've been dealing with it since 1997, 87, 77, 47, 57, 2007. Well, however long you've been dealing with it, God declares it is not too late. I can still bring you out.
Yes. Amen.
Many of us get used to just settling. That's just, I had a dream when I was young. I wanted to do that back in the day. But this is just where I am now. Don't you count down the days to the cemetery. The devil's a liar.
The devil's a liar. Amen.
It is not too late for you to come out. Tell somebody, I'm coming out.
I'm coming out.
And I'm coming out stronger.
And I'm coming out strong.
Y'all mumbled that one. I wouldn't believe it if you told me that one. Now say it to somebody else, I'm coming out.
I'm coming out.
I'm coming out strong.
And I'm coming out strong.
I'm not coming out the same person that I was last time. We're going to go to the presence of the Lord. I am coming out of this. Clap your hands and give the Lord a praise. Everybody in this room, whatever it is, come on, tell one more person, I am coming out of this. As a matter of fact, look at the person next to you and say, you are.
You are.
Glory.
Coming out of this.
Come on, give the Lord one more.
Amen. Hallelujah.